Welcome to coffeeis.me podcast, where me means you, or more precisely, us. This is the show where your host, Valerian, without using any interrogation techniques, convinces coffee professionals to reveal their secrets to teach and inspire you to make better coffee and earn a few bucks on the side, if that's what you fancy. Let the show begin.
Welcome, Coffee is Me listeners, to another episode of our podcast about coffee business, and other interesting things of life. Today I have a guest who I should have much sooner, but I failed. So first of all, I have to apologize for them because they are long-time listeners and they are awesome people, and we met in person. So welcome to Matt and Anya from Café de Leche.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for coming on, and I really apologize because we planned this 3-4 years ago.
A while. It's been a while, yeah.
We're not even going to put years on that.
Time is very fluid.
Especially in California, right? We are the kind of a more relaxed state.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm in a constant state of relaxation.
Especially with a small business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. As you can hear, guys, this interview will be pretty fun. I know you guys personally, and I always had a great time at your cafe in LA. But before we dive into your business, I always have this warm-up question, and this way we kind of know more about you, and that is, do you remember your first coffee?
I do actually, and I was thinking about this question earlier today. I was actually still living in Costa Rica. I was 10 years old, and I was in the kitchen. It was in the morning, and my mom was making coffee not the way I was raised drinking it, which is, typically in Latin America. The good coffee gets sent out, and we like drinking instant coffee. And so I grew up drinking instant coffee with milk, basically café de leche. And my mom said, I'm just making black coffee, the way they used to make it back in the day with the suck in a little pot that it's been in the family for like years and years, and it's like burned at the bottom because you use it so much. And I tried it, and I was like, what is this? And I remember not liking it. I drank it straight up black with nothing in it. And yeah, that was my first memory of having the very first time I had it.
Before we move on to Matt, I forgot to mention that you guys are married in business and in real life, and you're coming from Costa Rica.
I'm originally from Nicaragua, was born in Nicaragua at the age of 5 years old. My parents moved to Costa Rica, so I grew up part of my childhood in Costa Rica. In my teenage years, I grew up in Glendale, California.
Where did you find Matt?
I found Matt.
I was wandering. I was lost until she found me.
I knew that's the case.
I found him in Highland Park, and I'm like, what is this gringo doing here? I'm like, what is he in Highland Park? And he's like, you kidding me? It's lovely here. I'm like, yeah, but you have to understand Highland Park, the history. It's mainly Latino community, and I mean, you didn't see that many white people back in the day. So I was like, why is he here exactly? He bought his first home in Highland Park about 21 years ago. And he was my best friend, moved in because he was renting a room, and moved in with him, and she introduced us, and that's how everything started in Highland Park, California 20 years ago.
She walked through my front door, and it was one of those one of those God moments when the angels sing and the light kind of like pierces through, the doorway. So yeah, it was a wonderful moment. She walked through my front door, and it was a magical experience. It really was. It was like a love at first sight kind of situation. It's kind of amazing.
How about your first cup of coffee?
I do remember a friend of mine in high school got a job at, I think it was Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. And that was definitely the first, like, probably espresso machine I ever saw in my life. I didn't understand any of it. I'd never heard of it, as I'm sure anyone like near my age remembers, like espresso wasn't a thing in the States, at least not in, I grew up in Southern California, grew up in Ventura. It wasn't nowadays there's Starbucks in every corner. There was no espresso culture. I mean, in Europe, I know that that's, obviously where it came from and where it's been around for generations, but there was nothing like that where I grew up. And so I remember getting like a mocha or something like that, and maybe in the 80s, there was a cafe in Hollywood. If you're familiar with Hollywood or not at all, there's off of Hollywood Boulevard, there's this little side street that has this big mural of like all these movie stars sitting together in a movie theater, like this kind of fantasized idea of Marilyn Monroe sitting next to James Dean, and there was like a cafe in that building. I remember us driving all the way to Hollywood, which would be like an hour and a half for us drive down there at night, because it's like second wave coffee. Back in the day was like, I don't know. It wasn't always about the coffee. Really, it's more like there was probably like some kind of entertainment there or something, and we drove there, and I didn't know what it was. It was like espresso, and it had all this mystical kind of thing around it of how you'd call it rocket fuel, and it was supposed to be this magical thing, which it is kind of, but it was something I didn't understand very much.
And now, today, you are doing two cafes and you retailing, right? You guys roasting your own beans. How did you get there? I mean, where was the idea born? I never asked this question enough, I think, on this podcast, but it's like, where was the idea born that, first of all, what did you do before, and when did you decide that, okay, I'm doing a coffee business?
Well, when Anja and I met, we were both kind of working in entertainment because we live in Los Angeles, right? So it's the industry.
So if you are living in LA, you are either working in entertainment or you are a waiter.
It's a huge stereotype, and it's also like, yeah, it's real. Yeah, it is real. And working in entertainment is a very wide spectrum, right? Like I worked on photo shoots a lot. I was a photo assistant for like magazines, celebrity stuff, and Anja worked at Universal Studios, basically in post production and editing, and she can like kind of expand on that a little bit, but we were both working in the entertainment industry, and we had met and married and had our daughter at that point. And I think, well, as far as, I mean, she can probably expand a little bit more on when we first got the idea for coffee, but
I think that, we both like, enjoyed it, good coffee, very, very much so. And even before we had our first daughter, we would always, talk about, oh my gosh, there's no coffee shops around, our neighborhood in Highland Park. We always have to drive outside our, community to go get a good cup of coffee. So at the time we were dating, and we were in Costa Rica vacationing, and uh, I remember being in this little hotel, like kind of like a hostel, and we're like, it started talking about it again, how, like about the idea of opening a cafe in Highland Park. And I remember we had a notepad and started drawing like our branding and coming up with ideas, and just got really excited in that little teeny room. And I don't even know where that book is now, that notepad is, but so we left it at that. And we got busy, we got back to the States and never talked about it, because life just happened, right? And a few years later, yeah, we got married, we got our first child, and then we just had the opportunity and the funds to make our our dream, or the idea that started in Costa Rica um, come true, and that's what we did. What we had no clue of what we were doing. We just knew that it was kind of romanticizing with the idea of having your own business, and not knowing exactly where I don't know where we were going to take it exactly, or how is it going to. It was just really just us going like, we're opening a business, and it's going to be coffee, and that's it. I think that was about it. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
mean,
Matt.
Valerian, I listened to the
Um,
episode. I think it was your last episode that you published about the woman that bought the coffee business from you, and yeah, and you
Kelly,
made
yeah.
some kind of reference to like she has to not know what she's getting into to like make to like start on this journey, and that was absolutely our case. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say that we
yeah,
wouldn't have done it if we know everything that it entailed, but we were incredibly ignorant, of I mean, it's not, yeah, it's not like we were
we
ignorant of the
were.
coffee business. We were ignorant of business. Like I'd never, I,
We're not a
yeah,
business
I mean,
people. Now we
we
are,
don't have
but
experience in it. I didn't even finish college. You know what I mean? Like we have always worked for other people. Um,
we didn't finish
yeah,
college. Either one of us finished college. So it was basically me, Matt. It's if you don't have to finish college to be just naturally smart. My husband is an incredibly smart businessman. Naturally, I know he's humble about it, but he's just naturally a very business oriented person, and I think I brought my street smart, my ability to navigate the world, and bring like different views of, just again, street smart, and also working for other people. I work in a corporate environment, so I transferred my knowledge of managing people to our business. And so, but again, like Matt is saying, we just we didn't know exactly what we were doing.
It's not only with Kelly, but it's exactly the same story of Green Plantation, my European brand, and when we started Unleashed Coffee before we sold it to Kelly. Like, when it comes to Green Plantation, it was my first business, and we were totally ignorant. We did not know what's going to happen. We did not know. We just like, "Well, I think this is a great idea. Let's just, start roast coffee." And when it comes to Unleashed Coffee, it was a bit different because by then I was smart when it comes to business. I had experience, everything. William, my business partner, he's super educated. He has schools, and yet we missed the street smart. So you guys are ahead. I mean, having a street smart, who cares about college? Honestly, like, I have university, but who cares about that? Because I never really I had fun attending, and I have a lot of good friends from there, but I never really used it in real life. So I have to everything about I had to learn about business, or I have to do anything I had to learn about managing a business or doing a business. I had to relearn from real life. So I don't know. Maybe for some people that works, but did not work for me. So that's cool. And I wonder if anyone who starts a business has to be a little bit ignorant, because if you know what's ahead of you, would you do it? Would you guys do it if you know what's ahead of you?
I think that I would do it in the sense of, if I knew what was ahead of me in terms of business, maybe not, but in terms of personally, that what the business, how do I explain in terms of what the business has allowed us to do in our personal lives, raising our children.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it with my eyes closed, because it has given both Matt and I to be present parents 150%. Like, meeting, like, I'm sure, I'm not saying parents that work from 8 to 5 are not present. I'm saying that we didn't miss events. We were able to pick them up after school. They never went to a child care. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We were always there. We were able to take vacation at random times during the year where weren't other kids weren't able to. Our parents couldn't get out of work. So just for that reason and that reason only, I would do it again, even knowing that it's not easy.
But would you agree that with this ignorance, what Matt mentioned, you come into this world which you envision totally differently, and then suddenly you are dropped in the middle of the ocean and said swim that way. If you don't swim, you drown. And I have high on that. I love it. I love that feeling. It's scary, but in any time I do it, I always love it. But when I'm getting out of it, either selling by selling the company, or let's say I'm doing something else, change my profile, I always feel like I kind of did it, but do I want to do it again? And in a few years, yeah. But don't you agree that it was much harder than you thought it would be?
Yes, I totally agree, and I agree with you as well in terms of like it's good in a way to go into it not knowing, because let's put the pandemic as an example, right? When the pandemic hit, we panicked, right? Back in March. We're like, okay, and we're really truly a small business owners. It's Matt and I. We're the board of directors. Matthew Shodorf and Shodorf meet me in the office in the back of the house, and that's it. Let's make decisions. It's all no people are depending on us, so we had to regroup. Where we were quick to adjust to the times, to change things, to adapt. I'm sorry, to adapt with the times. With the pandemic. Uh, so so now looking back, Saturday, my cousin, we're fully vaccinated. We had dinner. Now looking back, I'm like, wow, we did it. I mean, we're still in it, but we adapted to the times. We are still here. We were talking to the SBA, an SBA officer just recently of Small Business Administration. They said 300,000 businesses have closed since the pandemic hit. So he was saying to us, you guys are a success story, right? So now, like sitting at the dinner table with my cousin, I'm like looking back and reminiscing and just like thinking about it and the things we did and the things she did, because she's a small business owner as well. We're like, wow, it feels good that we're like you're saying, right? Like you go through all these things and you have to swim really fast and you have to hustle, and then you come, at the end of the tunnel, you come, still alive and okay. You're like, whew, I did it.
Yeah.
It's a survival instinct, It's like I did it, and it feels good. Do I want to do it again? I'm not sure. I don't know if Matt wants to add anything
just
to that.
a small note on that. We were almost born in the fire, Valerian, because we opened in November of 2008, right? So 2007, that, obviously housing's like kind of crazy now, but there was a huge housing bubble back then. There was tons of money going around, and we didn't have a whole lot of cash, but we borrowed against our house to open this business, right? And we spent a decent amount of money, doing the build out for our first cafe. By the time that you don't do that overnight. So like by the end of 2008, well, the financial crisis hit, right? So Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers went down in September of 2008. We opened up in November of 2008, right? When we opened up, I mean, all the newscasts in the newspapers were like, how you're going to save money and make it through this crisis? It's like, just stop drinking coffee, stop going out to the cafe and, spending $3 a day or $4 a day on your coffee. It was, we had mortgaged our house to the hilt and put everything we had into this. And then it was like a ghost town in our shop, and I worked in print in magazines. Like, obviously that's not like a growth industry. So my work dried up. I was freelance. Andrew was working in the entertainment industry. They were kind of like tightening the belt there too. And like the only thing we had was this cafe, and we either had to make it work.
I got laid off. I didn't think I was gonna get laid off. I will open in November and get laid off in November, and that was not the plan. The plan is for Matt to take care of the business. Of course, me helping him on after work, or and because we had little kids and we needed the health insurance. So I had a great health insurance through my work. So the plan was for me to continue working and to keep my union hours. And then the recession hits in November, And I mean, we open in November and the recession just comes, like full blast, and we panic. We're like, oh my God, no job. We have 2
All
kids.
of our money was tied up in this thing. Our house is
We have to make
underwater.
this work.
Like, it was really hard, man. It was dark, but that's what we started. That was like day one for us, basically.
This is a super important topic which you guys opened. It's not only about the pandemic, but kind of the resilience and adapting to a change. So tell us more. What do you guys think you did that helped you, to go through this COVID so successfully?
We've been around for almost 13 years, the shop has, but we've been roasting for almost 5. And so part of that is we like to, like my wife mentioned before, like Anja mentioned before, like we like to travel. And that's one of the benefits of, if you can make it work, you can travel to origin, right? And you get to meet the farmers and the producers and at this point we kind of understand how that whole system works, but it's always enlightening and to be able to really meet the people face to face that you're working with, and that who are supporting you, and that hopefully you're supporting as well. And so we were in Guatemala this time last year, or just before the pandemic hit, and we kind of went in. Some people, when we took that flight to Guatemala City, I mean, some people were wearing masks. It was like on the horizon a little bit, right? I mean, 9 days later, our daughter is texting us like, they shut down Disneyland. People are hoarding toilet paper. We're in like Huehuetenango and like Shangri-La, in the green hills overlooking like Chiapas, going like, you guys all need to calm down, man. It's cool. It's gonna be fine, And we came back, and I think on a Saturday, and that Sunday, the governor shut down the state, like, all the restaurants are closed. And I went, and he's except for takeout. And I'm like, And the next day we had this big meeting with our staff, and we were like, I kind of likened it to, I don't know what I was trying to channel, but I was like, and they're baristas. They're all like 23 years old. Our staff, I keep getting older, and they all stay the same age, right? So like they've always been about in their early 20s, and I'm like, we made it through the Great Depression. We made it through the Civil Rights era. We made it through, like we're gonna make it through. And they're looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like it. But I saw
because they're so young,
that it was going to be significant. And this whole like, oh, it's going to be over in 30 days thing. Like, I didn't see how that was, going to be possible, and unfortunately we did have to lay off some folks, and we tightened our belt. We were very luckily, we were able to use some of that PPP funding assistance, which really helped us out significantly. And we were able to offer back the jobs to everyone that we had laid off. Some of them, only one of them actually took us up on it. And everyone else decided not to. But I think part of it was the resilience. And I give a lot of credit to my wife. We were like, I saw a lot of shops, I'm sure, Valerian, you saw this too. Like, people were like, oh, we're going to close down for right now. And in my mind, in our minds, it was like, who has the luxury of doing that? You know what I mean?
There's no option for us to close. There was there's no question.
I mean, we're going to do everything
we
can to be as safe as humanly possible. And we're always checking in with what the updated protocols are, and just using common sense, and just trying to, like, we don't want to be sick. We don't want our guests to be sick. We want everyone to be as healthy as humanly possible. We want our staff to be as healthy as humanly possible. We don't put anyone at risk, but also we got to make a living. And I still to this day don't understand how some of them were like, I'm just going to shut down for a couple months, For us, it was like, we're not closing down unless the sheriff or the National Guard show up. You know what I mean? It's like, we're going to push forward and, again, kind of like do the scrappiness or hustle or whatever it is.
And take the precautions and take the precautions. And that was my main thing from the get-go. Before I left to Guatemala, I left my staff because we didn't know much about it. It all exploded during our time to Guatemala. We were in Guatemala. I looked under the CDC guidelines, and I left my staff, my managers and supervisors, prepare what the protocols CDC had at the time, which was not a lot, but at least it was something, came back into this whole new world, basically new life. And immediately went to work in terms of like finding out what are the protocols, what should we be doing. So that's what we did. We, again, like my husband is saying, we want our employees to be safe. We want our customers to be safe. So that's what we did. We took everything, all the measurements and precautions and protocols, and I read so much as to what to do. And we put all those protocols in place just to take care of our staff mainly, and to take
Did
care
you
of
do
our
something which
customers.
other cafes or restaurants didn't do, but you took the risk on it and it worked out?
I mean, I think for us, what it forced us to do was, you've been in business for a while, Valerian. You do something and it kind of works and you keep doing it, right? Because
Mhm.
maybe you have an idea to improve it, but your time's limited, your resources are limited, and you're kind of like, unless something's really broken, once you got something in motion, you kind of let it go. Well, this really disrupted, talk about like Silicon Valley talk, like this really disrupted everything, right? It forced us to really give a very critical eye to everything that we were doing, because especially when it first hit, I mean, our sales were down significantly, at an unsustainable level. And you go like, do I need this many hours? Do I need all the staff to be on this long? How else can we reach
Mm-hmm.
our guests? Like how else can we? And so, I mean, I think that
Do we need to restructure? Do we need to restructure our ordering? Do we order for one, because we have two stores? Do we order now for only one store and ourselves drive the other half to the other location? Do you know what I mean? So we had to restructure
and I think
all of that.
we had been
Yeah.
working on our website and updating for like online sales for our roasted coffee. And so to answer your question, I don't know if we did anything innovative that's today different than what a lot of other shops are doing, but I think we may have started doing it a little bit earlier, a little bit faster because we were forced to, and we kind of the two of us decided that we weren't going to throw in the towel, and so we had to try these new things out. You know what I mean? Try out the online order, the contactless, like the Chow Now. Like people being able to order ahead, not having to touch the iPad um, or pushing them towards our website more, um, and and try to like do local
And
deliveries and
also,
things like that, which we weren't doing before the pandemic.
but also, going back to, like what I said earlier about board of directors, right? Matt and I are the only, we are Café de Leche. We don't have investors. Like my husband's saying, we don't have the luxury to say, wait, okay, let me wait, or let me close. This is a livelihood. This is all we got, and we love what we do as much as it's a pain in the rear end. It's our livelihood, and so we do not have the luxury to just sit on it and wait to see what the CDC or what anyone else is doing. We need to focus on us, on our business, on making it, and that's what we did. So it was not an option for us. So we moved quickly. We moved and adapted and just regrouped. And I guess I don't know if it's considered something that it was done differently, or we have to
No, you
continue fighting it.
basically like you did what I did too, and I'll admit it now, and I don't know if I don't edit this out because it will sound a little bit weird, or it will sound that I'm some kind of evil person. But when when I saw that the pandemic will be a serious issue, I get this little butterfly in my stomach coming out. And it's like there's opportunity here. There is something we can do differently, and finally, I can take up the risks which I never took up before and test them out, because everybody is going to do that, or they will complain because they are stunned. And that's what happened. So we did a lot of experience with Green Plantation, and boy, some of them worked out so well that we are super happy now. So, and it's exactly what you said, that we would probably have done them, but maybe in like a year or two, but because of the new situation, we just went ahead and made sure that they are implemented ASAP, and we see whether they work or not. So that was a very smart move, I think. But going back I'm kind of moving back from from we are in a pandemic now, and we're going back to your business a little bit. We didn't really talk what is it. So you guys have two cafes, right? You guys roast your own coffee, sell it online in your cafes, and you do wholesale too, right? You said that you started to roast like 5 years ago, you mentioned.
About that, yeah.
Okay, so what did you do before with the coffee, and how did your portfolio and coffee change after you started to roast?
Well, I mean, to go kind of way back to the beginning, you know, when it's hard now because specialty coffee is so prevalent. I think even in smaller markets in the United States, but in 2008, I mean, there really wasn't specialty coffee. When we opened up in Northeast LA in 2008, there was not there wasn't very many shops. Intelligentsia had just got here from Los Angeles, and there was maybe one or two other shops. But you know, when we were opening, we didn't know if we were what, you know. It was very common for a cafe to just be like a second wave shop with those, like, you know, smoothie little, you know, things on the windows, like different like posters on the windows, kind of second wave kind of thing, you know what I mean? You didn't know if it was going to be, it wasn't like a focus on, you know, for third wave stuff. It was just starting to begin. And so I looked out for like I don't know how, but I kind of found Stumptown, and I tried to buy Stumptown coffee. At the time, they were only in Portland, and we reached out to them, and they said no. They asked what kind of equipment we had and what we were doing, and they wouldn't sell us the coffee. You know what I mean? So Intelligentsia had just come to town, and they opened up the roaster more or less in our neighborhood. And we reached out to them, and they kind of set us up the first year, and it was good. It was you know, it was a good experience, but it wasn't really quite what we wanted. And we reached out to Stumptown a year later, and they said, okay, well, you know, I said, we know what we're doing, you know. So they started selling us a coffee, and so we were one of the first Stumptown accounts in California. I think maybe Ritual had it at the time. And then and us and the Ace Hotel in Palm Springs, I think, possibly, you know. But it was new, and people would come to us from like different parts of California because they're like, oh, I'm from Portland, and I haven't had Stumptown coffee forever. So it was a really big deal. Now, of course, you can get Stumptown at like Target, you know. But at the time, it was a really kind of, you know, new and fresh thing. And you know, over the years, more and more specialty coffee came around, and to kind of set ourselves apart, we came to a point where we really needed to, you know, make the decision to roast. You know, so that's kind of where we came to, is because we were one of the only specialty coffee shops again in like Northeast Los Angeles, and then we come to a spot where we're surrounded by specialty shops, you know what I mean?
And also it gets to the point, I guess, after, you know, you start gaining more experience and knowing more of what you want to do, where you want to take your business, what, you know, how you want to approach just the path you want to take, you know. It changes, you know. At the beginning we didn't know what we were doing, then later on we kind of like started learning more and understanding more the business. And I at least for me, I'm not going to speak on behalf of my husband, but at least for me, Intelli was not for the path that I wanted it to take. It was that their model. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize them. Everybody has their own thing, right? But it was not the type of business model that I wanted it for my business. And so I actually never, you know, wanted it to stay forever and ever with any of the roasters. I eventually wanted it to set my own stamp, you know, in the coffee world. And that only became a reality when we started roasting. And that was the ultimate goal, to become our,
When you decided
roasters.
that, yeah, we're going to roast, did you research coffee roasters and how the process went, and what did you end up buying?
We did. Between Matt and I think we were at the
Yeah.
Seattle convention, right, Matt? If I'm right, we were just talking to different companies, and finally, I think they had which
I mean, we were
I
looking
forget
at the different options. I
whether
was like kind of looking at ProBots originally just because they seem kind of the industry standard. But
right, yeah,
yeah,
that
we
was
were
like
at
it, yeah,
SCA, I think it was called SCAA then. A couple of those conventions, you get to see the roasters, and again, like not knowing anything about anything, you just talk to a lot of people.
right,
I talked to some other coffee consultants and kind of got their opinion and whatnot, but we ended up with a Gießen. Um, with
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a 6 kilo Gießen. And I think Valerian, you've given this piece of advice, and I've heard it in a lot of places, that always buy something a little bit more than what you think you need. And I didn't listen to that, and so we got the 6. Whereas I think we could have probably done with the 15. And it's not that we're exceeding our
yeah,
capacity with the 6 kilo, but what the amount we roast, which is I roast 2 days a week. We roast about 300 pounds a go. So it's I could roast more days a week and handle it okay, but just because of scheduling and the amount of time, yeah, I mean, I have things to do every day, so I try to confine it to 2 days a week. So if I did it more days a week, it'd be a little more comfortable. The fact that I do it only 2 days a week, I roast, my roast days are 8 or 9 hours long sometimes, and it can get a little bit, I don't want to say monotonous, but it's a lot of work. You
You
know what I
are
mean?
referring to the advice I did long time ago about the fact that it's better to roast fewer days and then spend those other days to marketing or sales, right? That's what you're referring? Oh, okay. Well, the
Yeah,
thing about
exactly.
the size of the roaster is that I got beef for that advice. Some people really did not like it. They are coffee roaster producers. I will tell you right away. There's a video out there which criticizes my article about that, but I don't care. The thing is that it works for us, and everybody has to decide what works for them. I just remember that I did that mistake multiple times. I told this story many times, but if there are new listeners, my first roaster was a 250-gram electric roaster. Dumb, right? 250 grams. I mean, whatever. Because I had a small coffee, and I thought, well, if I fill up the grind, it will be enough. Nope. So then I had a 3 kilo one, which kind of fall into my lap. It's a very old 1938 ProBat. You can roast 2 kilos on it easy, and that worked a little bit. But then when I got to the wholesale part, actually bailed on that, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do roasting for a while. But when I restarted Green Plantation in 2012, I said to my new partners, I said, look, guys, we are not going to go under 5 kilo at no point. I mean, we're buying only 5 kilo roaster minimum. And they're like, that's a lot of coffee. I said, but no, we are buying 5 kilo. Trust me, I made this mistake twice. In 2 years, we are upgrading to 15 kilo. So it's like I did it mistake too many times. And 15 kilo now, actually what we have now is a ProBat UG 22. Again, that fall into my lap, so we replaced the 15 kilo Turkish one with that ProBat UG 22, and that's too much for us right now. That's a little bit like, it's more than we can chew on. But
That's
yeah,
in
that's in
Europe.
Europe. Yeah. So that's my European brand. In United States, I used always co-roasting facilities. Like we have these amazing co-ro in Berkeley, and we just rented time on Loring's.
That was a really big sticking point. So that if someone's trying to get into roasting now, I think it's a much you have much more opportunities,
better
because
option,
there
yeah,
were no co-roasting
yeah.
options in Los Angeles in 2008, like zero. And I would be like chasing down people going, hey, can I buy time on your machine? And like, it's very, it is like people are like, oh, you're going to be a competitor, I don't want to give you, like that's going to stop
Yeah.
me or something. You know what I mean? Like, why don't
Right.
you just make money off me while I'm trying to figure it out, um
It was actually really hard for Matt. He was like knocking at doors and everyone, now. So it
yeah,
was
no,
really
it,
hard. Go
and
ahead,
and
honey.
now there's a couple different options, but Pulley Collective, which is out of Brooklyn, they're here in LA now, and there's some other ones, And I've rented time on my machine to other people for the same thing. I mean, granted, like if you're going to open up a shop on my block, yeah, I'm probably going to give you a little resistance. But if you're going to go somewhere else in Los Angeles, I mean, for the love of God, yeah, go for it, you know. And I've got 5 days a week that I'm not using my roaster. So why would I not, you know, be to my advantage to let someone else use that? It offsets some of my costs. And I mean, frankly, I like sharing a bit of my knowledge, you know, what I've learned now. I still have a heck of a lot to learn, but I enjoy that. You know what I mean? I enjoy um, kind of sharing what I've learned so far. If someone needs that, and if not, a lot of times the people that I actually roast time with, they know more than I do. So then I pick their brains for information, you know? So it's it's the collaborative side of specialty coffee that everyone kind of talks about that isn't always true, but it can be true in certain situations. And I think it certainly can be true with something like a roaster that just has so much expenses up front, you
Actually,
know?
you opened my eye. We had this conversation before when I was in your cafe, like whatever, X years ago. And we had this conversation, and I was one of those guys who's like, if you come to my roaster, I'm not going to give you my roaster. I mean, you're going to my competitor. Then we had this conversation. I was like, wait, he's right. Not only that, I will profit on my competitor, right? I mean, when can you profit on your competitor? When he pays you money to roast on your equipment. And I was like, that's great. That's one thing. A second thing is like, that person might be a very skilled salesman, but not so skillful roaster. So then you have a partnership opportunity question mark, or, you know, that's just one example. There's so many opportunities when you let other people go and roast in your place. And if you are greedy or egoistic, then it can be the money and the fact that you are kind of riding on, you know, on them a little bit. And if you are more open, like, you know, in the specialty world, we have that opportunity for future cooperation, partnerships, new friendships, whatever, you know. It's like, so in Green Plantation, we actually opened our roastery, and now if people want to come, they can roast their own coffee. But Slovakia is far behind, you know, United States when it comes to co-roasting. They don't trust us. They don't. It's like, why would you do that to us? Why would we do that? Because you will do it anyway. You want to start your brand, you will do it. So why we wouldn't have any profit on you, some profit on you? And maybe if I like what you do, because not everybody does specialty coffee. Somebody does, you know, like bulletproof, or somebody does, you know, something like the Death Wish does, the strongest coffee in the world. So maybe we even partner up with you. I don't know. Maybe I invest in you. I don't know. Come and roast with us. Yeah, let's figure this out.
Yeah. And like you were saying, we had a company. I forget what their honey they ended up moving to Santa Monica. They were gonna open a cafe in Santa Monica, and they ended up moving out of state. I forget their names. They were roasting in our shop in Highland Park, but they had no clue as to, like, they started talking to me because I'm the HR. I do all that stuff besides copying and everything else. He just had like tons of questions. He sat down with me and his business partner, and I said, I'm more than welcome to share my knowledge of how it is to run a cafe, and what you need and what the laws are, in the state of California. And sure enough, he and Matt shared bounce ideas of each other when it came to roasting. And he asked me, Anja, would you mind sitting down with me, and I have a few questions for you. And that's what we did. We sat down, his business partner came, and they took notes. And it's Matt and I are pretty good about those things. We're pretty open about sharing, like our knowledge, the knowledge that we gain, and sharing that with others. Uh, we don't see that as a threat.
Yes, and we know who we are. Now that's an awesome sentence. I'll tell you why. Because I think everybody can roast coffee. You can learn it easy. I mean, little plug, coffeecourses.com, $500, and you got the whole knowledge of coffee roasting and coffee anything. Or you can go anywhere you want, right? It's easy to get the knowledge. And then you have to sell it, which again, you have to acquire the skill of sales. But then it's you, your personality. Because I don't think people go to your cafe because you have a Gießen, or people don't go to your cafe because, you have certain coffees. That's a part of it. But the biggest part of it's you guys and the vibe you create, in your place.
And honestly, you can't please everyone. You can't, you try your very best to give the best, right? But you can't, you have to, I feel like working coffee, like some people are trying to please the specialty association, coffee association, the specialty coffee businesses, the I don't know, the LA scene, I just feel like you just have to do what you do and do it
I
the
think they do
best you
it because
can.
they didn't get it yet. But I love this definition about branding, which is like that's my go-to definition of branding. Branding is a gut feeling about your company, meaning if person looks at you or looks at the owners, the cafes, the coffee, the logo, the anything, how you speak, how you talk, how you move, that creates a gut feeling about your company, and that's brand. And that's exactly what's happening. So, and we were going to talk about a little bit about the branding because you guys are super sharp on that. But let's move on a little bit with this coffee roaster because I want to kind of wrap it up. How happy are you with Gießen, and what kind of roast profiles are you using on it?
I like the machine a lot. I think the Gießen is a pretty good machine. I really like um well, the way they integrated with Cropster. So I've used Cropster for folks that aren't familiar with the roasting. You can roast analog, basically old school. I mean, the technology for roasting, correct me, Larian, but it's basically like 100 years old, right? I mean, you got a spinning barrel and some heat underneath it. I mean, that hasn't changed really forever. What has changed is being able to read like with thermocouples, like thermometers, that what the bean temperature is at different times in the roast, what the air temperature is, right? And then some other small things where you can like maybe adjust the speed of the drum or the flow, a little more precision with the airflow, things like that, right? So the software basically records all this while you're roasting and allows you to be consistent with your roast. So when you do, because sometimes, especially when I started, you're taking kind of a stab in the dark at stuff. You don't, even if you relatively do know what you're doing, you don't really necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. And even to this day, I struggle with cause and effect of, if I adjust the airflow at this point in time in the roast, how's that going to affect the ultimate outcome of the flavor of the coffee? But when you do find yourself with something you like or something you don't like, if you want to avoid again, we now have the luxury of the software to be able to replicate or not replicate what you did before. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
Yeah. So yeah, I was just kind of trying to break it down for people that wouldn't be as familiar with the systems. The way they integrated with the Gießen, I really like a lot, and they've done something recently where there's kind of I think they call it replay. So the computer actually is able to take over certain parts of the roast for consistency, right? So it's not like it's some robot doing it. It's like you've created this, but you're able to do it consistently, right? And just a few months ago, they included airflow control, which for me was fantastic. I mean, that really put the icing on the cake for me. So the integration with Cropster with the Gießen, I really like a lot. Um, I don't want to throw Gießen totally under the bus, but their U.S. support is poor. There's a really nice woman on the East Coast that helps us out now, and that's been in the past year or so, maybe a little more than a year, that they have someone in the U.S. that you can call. Before, I would have to, like, in the middle of the night, call Europe, and so that was not pleasant. And so I still struggle a little bit with their support as far as I'm trying to get my, regular maintenance on the machine. I'm starting to have to do it myself a little bit more. I'm not terribly mechanical guy, so it's something I'm doing, but I'm not. It wouldn't be my first choice. So pros and cons. Love the machine. Love the software and integration. The support side of it is they're a European company, and they're strongly in Europe.
That's not excuse
so,
though.
I wish they had more support in the U.S., man. I really do. And if I had to do it all over again, I may lean towards I don't even know much about the San Franciscan other than that they're made in Nevada, and I bet I could get someone on the phone real close. You know what I mean? And I could probably drive to their factory if I had to. I've heard good things about those. Mill City, there's obviously Probot. I think they have some pretty good U.S. support. again, this is hard because I started out on this road. I've literally roasted on like one other roaster in my life, so I don't have a lot of.
Tell me about your
perspective.
portfolio. What kind of coffees do you have, and how do you select them?
Well, so we try to, you know, our ultimate goal is to be able to serve coffees from producers that we know personally, you know, and at this point we're at about 50% there. So we still, you know, we work with importers we trust. We big shout out to Crop to Cup, who I traveled with to Ethiopia a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would have to agree on that. That's one of my favorite importers, I would say. Through the pandemic, I just, like my husband is saying, big shout out to them because they were absolutely amazing to work with. I can thank them enough for the flexibility, their knowledge, and just they treated us, you know, more
Yeah. So,
like
I
a
mean,
business
the reason why my wife
transaction, like
jumped
a
in so
friendship.
strongly
And
there is that's
so,
one thing that
yeah, very happy that we're with
that
Crop to Cup.
I think a lot of people don't consider when they're thinking about it. They think about what's the quality of the coffee and where did it come from, and all these things are important. But there's also a personal level, which is my wife handles all the financials for our company, and there's their accounting department and how they treat you and all that other side of business, right? When you're doing business with someone, that can be really nice or very unpleasant, you know, and that's a big part of running any business, you know. All whatever those accounts are, you know, whichever side you are on those, and they're a wonderful company with really good people. So like the importers that we have worked with have some of the origin, the farmers at origin we met through other channels, but majority of them we've met through importers. And so we've been fortunate enough to go. Like I said, we were in Guatemala last year. Year before that, we were in El Salvador and Ethiopia. Year before that, we were in Nicaragua. And so we are able to have ongoing relationships with the farmers, and then, you know, obviously it helps to be able to tell these stories. It helps for our sales within the coffee community, within the specialty coffee community. I think these are old, you know, these are kind of, some people actually kind of scoff at it even more now. You know, it's like, oh wow, you've been to Origin, big freaking deal. But it really is still important for our customers to be able to like share with them where these coffees are coming from, and that we have the knowledge that we've met the producers, and more importantly, even I think the people actually doing the real work, like the people that pick the coffee and what conditions they live and work in, and we're always trying to educate ourselves more, but at least having some knowledge about how they're being compensated, and what the living conditions are, and how we can hopefully improve their lives ultimately, you know. And that's a big deal to us, and it's something that, you know, we moving forward, like when we look past this current journey of being a coffee roasting company and we look into retirement, I mean, our ultimate goal is to set up something that we can hopefully like set up some kind of a nonprofit or something that could ultimately, the goal would be to benefit those people, because those are the people that are doing the real work, and those are the people that are, you know, benefiting probably the least in this whole like journey, you know. And coffee is a worldwide product, and you know, there's thousands of people
Yeah.
that are that work really, 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 really hard, and a lot of them aren't compensated super well, you know. And so being able to meet them and see them face to face puts a lot of stuff into perspective, and makes you want to be able to tell their stories a little bit more, you know. So anyway, so a lot of the coffees that we get, about half of our coffees are from these relationships, and the other ones are from other farms that we vetted through importers that we know and trust and have built up relationships with over time. That being said, we like to focus on Central American coffees. If you know, we have some coffees from Ethiopia, and our newest ones from Rwanda.
it's so amazing to hear from you guys that you are so person oriented that when I ask you about even about the coffee, like how do you get your coffee how do you get your coffee? I'm getting emotional. So when you said that, how you getting your coffees into your portfolio, instead of answering me that, oh, we cup and we evaluate and we buying the best scores, you went like, you didn't even mention that at all. What you did mention is the relations, the friendships, and I love that. It's very rare. Well, it's United States, maybe it's more than Europe, but I know that in Slovakia, my homeland, I was recently on one. It's kind of like live podcast or whatever that was, and there was more roasters, and there was a similar question. And people like, what's most important for you in your coffee? And people like the score, the acidity, the roast degree, stuff like it's like. And I said, well, for me, it's the story. It's amazing. Like if you hear the story, who grew it, you know that person, you see his or her eyes. That's I miss traveling more. I should travel definitely more. I love Central America. I never been in Nicaragua or Guatemala. I did Costa Rica and Panama. And Panama I did professionally to go to coffee farms with Willem Booth and stuff like that. But in Costa Rica, I was on holidays on a beach resort, a very fancy one, and I was like in a seventh heaven. So it was really, really beautiful. These countries are just amazing, like really amazing, and we should really help them and guard them because these are treasures, on the planet. So
I see it like you're saying. We are we don't talk very like technical. Like I notice as a woman, when I'm copying with, sometimes there's like 10, 15 men, and then there's me. They all try to get very like talk over each other and get technical about it. I'm like, yeah, no, this tastes like bananas to me. And they're like, what? It's like, well, it's my taste buds, not yours. So and they start getting, which I understand sometimes, but I think Matt and I were more like about connections, the stories, the emotions, and I don't know. We're pretty easygoing we want good quality. Obviously, we know who we are and the coffees we want, but we're not. We're a little different.
when you are technical, especially towards customers, I think you are intimidating them. Like they're intimidating. They feel kind of like, ooh, but emotions sell. And I know in your case, I can feel that it's very natural. It comes from you. It's not something you are kind of like, creating. It's very like it's you. That's you guys. But in marketing, emotions are the ones which sell. That's why, scaring people or giving them like a chance of better love always works in marketing. So you guys are on a good path. So that's definitely awesome.
Thank you so much. We try. I mean, it's not that we try. It's naturally the people we are. Like truly love what we do. As much as like I said earlier, it's hard. It's not easy. We just That's our favorite part of working in coffee is the travel, the stories, the sitting with the farmers, talking, having a meal with them. Um, that's at least for me, and I'm
I
sure it's
mean,
for
there's
Matt
there's
as
so
well.
much good, Valerian. I mean, you've
It's
tasted,
so,
I'm sure, quite a lot of coffee in your time.
I
I
don't
mean,
know,
there's
so
there's so
special.
much good coffee out there. Obviously, there's some, not everything's a cup of excellence finalist, but on the whole, if you're a relatively busy shop and you're moving good coffee, I mean that the coffee that falls into that category is pretty broad, I think. And so like the finding these, making these connections with these stories, like we work with Expo Camo, and that's the dry mill in Nicaragua. I mean, these are good people doing good work. Like that's who you want to support. Cedro Alto, Carl, I think I'm going to say his name correctly, Weinhold. I don't know if you follow him in Colombia. He's supporting a lot of indigenous producers. Like these are the people we want to work with. You know what I mean? Because they're doing
He's
their
doing great
best,
things.
and it's not altruistic. It's not like they're just doing it because they want to be, whatever, like, look at me, I'm a great person. It's they're making a living too. But if you can make a living and try to like bring up people and you still have the really good coffee, I mean, that seems, I mean, I'm not, I mean, that seems like kind of the best of all worlds, that's the I don't know.
Exactly.
It would seem the logical conclusion, like what you would want to go for, you know.
You're basically making business with your own peeps, like people you like, your friends and stuff. So that's that's always impressive. But going further, because I already mentioned marketing a little bit. I'm following you for a while now, and I'm like always shocked about your branding and marketing. It's always spot on. And I always feel it's two of you guys. You don't have any marketing team. You don't have any fancy designer company behind you. My first question would be, what do you think, how important it is for startups to start with a good branding? Because in my world, I meet a lot of startups, and I think that they branding many times kind of lacks, and they excuse this, we don't have money for that. So my first question would be, how important is in a start the branding? And second, how do you guys do it?
I think branding is incredibly important. I mean, I said I bounced around working in entertainment and stuff. The job I had before I was doing photography was in entertainment advertising. So we did, like, at the time it was like DVD boxes and movie posters and movie trailers and things like that. So I had a little bit of it, but I wasn't an art director by any stretch of imagination. And I can work with key art, but I don't create key art really. But I understood the importance of that, and you're absolutely right. Like the branding is like super important. We are kind of fortunate enough because of where we are. A good friend of ours has a place called Scrap Labs, which is basically upstairs from our cafe, who has done a lot of work with us. And I mean, because we're friends, he's kind of helped us out a little bit on that. I think a lot of people if you look around your community, you'll they're the artists there, and so paying them a little bit, and I'm not saying don't pay them what they're worth, but I'm just saying, like, spending a little bit more of your budget than you'd be, because when you're starting off, you don't have a lot for anything, right? So I'm not saying an exorbitant amount of money, but actually spending some money on that branding is probably some of the best money you can spend, because the return on that is going to be pretty good, because most people don't know what they're drinking with coffee. I mean, just like straight up, like customers. I mean, you'll have some people that really know what they're talking about. The majority of people are drinking coffee, and this is from someone that goes through a long length. I just told you about how I was traveling to countries and I spent years trying to learn how to roast. Most people the product that I work night and day to create the best that I can is getting buried under 12 ounces of milk and a whole bunch of sugar, right? So most people aren't tasting that. What they're buying isn't that. What they're buying is what you said, Valerian. They're buying your brand. They're buying your idea. They're buying your worldview. They're buying what you're trying to do, in the world. And so the way to convey that is through your branding, and I think our branding is good. It always needs, it's always, and we've also had like some other friends help us with websites and stuff. Yeah, it's always improved, I'd say.
I think it has evolved. Yeah, it has evolved to the point that I mean, we had a barista that Christine, wherever you are, we love you. Thank you for the unidog logo. She was one of our baristas that worked for us for many years. She loved drawing on cups.
Creations, yeah.
And we fell in love with one of her drawings, creations, and we bought it from her. We bought the rights from her, and that is the unidog that you see at the bottom of the cup when you drink coffee. You see it everywhere pretty much, and it's being actually one of our most like eye catchers of all the logos that we had and it's like we're gonna continue pushing it forward along with our our new design.
Yeah,
because we've been listening to you for a long time,
driving around.
Our kids grew up. I think Matt told you the story.
They're okay.
Our kids grew up
They turned out
listening
really
to
well.
you in the car driving around. It's like,
yeah.
Well, they're okay.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Anything to do with coffee, but not because of you. But it's just, but she's like, I don't,
Always visiting
are we
cafes
gonna
and
listen to? Are we gonna go to a coffee shop? Why do we? Because everywhere we travel, we have to go taste coffee.
Do we have to visit
And
all
our
the
son
coffee
already,
shops?
we're going to Puerto Rico, late July, and he already came to us and said, "Can we not go?"
We try to balance that out a bit, and now they're older, so we just we can split. They can do their thing, and we'll go hit the cafes. But yeah, it definitely. I don't know. Maybe they'll turn at some point in time, but our kids are 14 and almost 17 now, and they're yeah, not their thing.
You stole my question. I wanted to ask you about the unicorn, but it's a unidog. I remember when I was at your place and you have these big cups, with a big saucer. I was drinking like regular, just black coffee. And I finished the coffee and there it was. On the bottom of the cup, there was the unidog. And I fall in love with it. And I'm showing it to everyone all the time because you guys gave me that cup. I treasure it. I still have it. You guys sell online, you do wholesale, you do your cafes. If somebody is starting today a coffee business, which would you recommend? Would you recommend people to start directly with a cafe? So they should have a cafe with their business, or they should go just to retail and wholesale?
We took the cafe route. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it would look like the other way around.
That's a
I
good
know
question.
some people that do it, that they're only wholesale and retail. They don't have a physical space. Um, I feel like you can start retail on a very small scale, though. I mean, you can, depending on where you are, LA County is a real pain in the neck, but like in some more civilized parts of the world, you can have like literally like a table and serving coffee at a farmer's market or something like that. And the price to get in, the price of entry is much lower. Whereas, well, I mean, you can wholesale by renting machine now, again, depending on where you are. But I personally would think retail is kind of the way to go.
I would
You
say,
know,
yeah, like Matt is saying, it's really hard because we did retail first, right? I would say for me, from the experience, just having employees and all that implies, and especially like Matt is saying, it's just not only the LA County, but it's state of California. It's really not employer friendly. So
Mhm.
I would go
so we would have
retail
started two
wholesale.
different
I mean,
businesses.
yeah, I would go wholesale
So we had the same
instead of
experience,
having
just two different
having
outcomes. Yeah.
But
a yeah. Just coming from an HR, because I like I was saying, I do cupping and I do all this. I don't roast because can you imagine roasting and we have our jobs within the company,
Anja, I
so
totally get
I
you.
understand it a little bit, but I not doing that. So coming from a more of an administrative business um operations, because I'm a the CFO as well, so I would say just, wholesale and before opening an actual like retail space for, a cafe. But that's just me.
One of my most exciting questions is always when I can ask you about your $10,000 business. If I would give you today $10,000 and I tell you, hey guys, you have to make some business in the coffee industry, what kind of business would it be?
This is where I completely flip, and then maybe my wife convinced me on this. The funny thing is, if you put these constraints on it, right, where it's $10,000, I absolutely would think going the co-roasting route would be the way to go. You know what I mean? Though, because I never had that opportunity, but because it's so expensive to actually open a physical cafe. I mean, for us, realistically, in the style that's popular where we are and all that, opening a cafe is around $100,000 on the low end. You know, so to not have to buy furniture and equipment and everything else and just to rent and then buy green coffee, I think it's very doable to be able to do that within $10,000 budget. Now, of course, you're not making a living. You're like probably have another job and you do this on the weekends, but like to be able to start a business like that, I think, uh,
Or
yeah,
you're not in
yeah,
LA.
yeah. And this is, again, we're talking from the perspective of Southern
It's,
California, which
oh
is,
God.
I'm from a small town in Ohio. I mean, there's a lot, it's a different world there. And in some ways, a lot of other opportunities. that aren't here, where it's super hyper competitive, where, like at one point in time, we were the only shop in Northeast LA, and now we're one of 4 on our block, like literally on our block, you know what I
We were
mean?
the
And
trendy,
and
yeah.
one of probably 12 in our neighborhood, you know. It's a lot different in maybe rural Ohio or different parts of the world, you know. So I think if you had the $10,000, you can most definitely spend some of that money on branding, find a good artist to work with, and find your voice, hook up with a good importer that's going to support you, that's going to understand that you're small and you need to grow, and they're out there for sure. Again, the ones we mentioned are wonderful people to contact if you're interested in that. And you could absolutely start a coffee business. In fact, it might be to your advantage to be in a small town. No, granted, you'd have to be in some place that has a co-roasting place nearby that you could do, or a roaster that you can rent time from. But if you do, I mean, there's like I'm losing their name now, but there's some like even in like Idaho and different parts of the Midwest, you know. They're all over the country now. So I'm sure, like, in Missouri and a lot of not just like the coast things or the Pacific Northwest, where it all kind of started from, that you could definitely start a business for $10,000.
We just met somebody in
Yeah.
Hawaii that, young guy, very driven.
He had a
Had
coffee
like
cart.
a
He probably
cart.
spent more than ten
But
thousand dollars
the
on that, though.
branding
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, all the
Well, oh,
grinders and
maybe because it was Hawaii, but it looked
espresso
all the grinder.
machine. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that's
espresso
true.
machine's like
That's
15
true.
grand. Yeah.
Very teeny place, but branding
Yeah.
was amazing, spot on.
Passionate
I
guy.
just,
Passionate guy. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Passionate guy, that's for sure.
Guys, thank you so much for this answer, because I know it's very challenging. If you guys have a question towards me, shoot.
How long have you been in coffee yourself? Like, how long have you been doing this?
I used to be a diplomat working in the post-war areas for UN and stuff like that. Very young, so it's a very good career. But I wanted to stop it for obvious reason. A, it's super depressing. B, the conditions are very hard to work in these kind of times. So in 2002, when I returned from Kosovo, I decided, because of my wife, to start to do coffee. But I started my first coffee company, my first cafe, and I very fast learned that I hate the whole cafe stuff. I love the coffee roasting stuff, but it failed. And then my dad took it over in 2004, and he was doing the coffee roasting, and we were doing it together while I had a job. And I really got back into it when I moved to the United States, and I met Willem Booth, got all the fancy know-how through building the coffeecourses.com, at that time Bootcamp Coffee, and starting also the Green Plantation, where I implemented everything I learned from Boot Coffee. Like, technically, obviously, I learned about marketing from other sources, and I implemented all these new know-how on this test company called Green Plantation in Slovakia.
So wait, you worked with your father?
Well, the story is that I worked myself first. I got the coffee bug. I really wanted to do coffee. My dad was actually angry because, I have a Master of Arts in political science. I was one of the best in the school. So he was like, gosh, you studied so hard. You did this great career. You were lucky enough to, be chosen by Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to work in a post-war areas in human rights. And then you go and roast coffee. You are insane, man. And I was like, well, I know.
But then after that,
So
you brought him in, so he tells you you're crazy, and then he starts doing.
Yeah, in 2004, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And he's like, but I will miss the coffee, because I was providing his coffee with my roast. And he said, show me how to do it. I showed him how to do it, and I told him that how much you can earn with that, and he was like, what? That much? That's amazing. I will do it. I was like, fine, do it. So he was doing it, and he was getting pension, like from the state, and plus this extra money. And he was super happy because he has an expensive hobby. He loves old books, and he loves antiques. He loves history. So he could finance everything, plus trips to the coast or whatever with my mom for roasting once a week on Tuesdays, packages it, sends it out on that 3 kilo probat, which I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, and makes his life happy. He doesn't have to pay for employees. He doesn't have to, pay for marketing or anything. All he does, he roasts once a week, once a day as a pensioner, and he's super happy.
Yeah. And then I guess the follow-up to that would be like, why have you stuck with this for so long?
Well, it's a great question because it makes me think, why am I still in it? And you are right, I'm a person who likes different things. I always say that every year I learn something new. So, I was doing natural wine. I know how to now, analyze chocolate, right? And roast it and get the beans and everything when it comes to chocolate making, which is weird because it's a very complex process. But I learned it because I was curious. And there's always this little devil which tells me that, hey, maybe you should start a business in that, or hey, you should go maybe that way. But always come back to coffee. I mean, first of all, I have most of my friends are in coffee, right? All my friends here are doing coffee, so that's one thing. I still have the business in Slovakia, which I think is one of my babies, and I love it. I know it's far away, but everything I do in Slovakia always fulfills me very well. I write articles, I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, and it's just super exciting. And egoistically, it's only thing that I really know right now. It's I'm good at. So I'm not good at, I don't know, financing or maybe, I don't know, any other thing. I'm good at coffee, so I'm sticking with it. But I tell you one thing, that I became super sensitive to caffeine, which sucks, because like I have coffee in the morning and after that I cannot have coffee. I can, but I know that in the evening I'm going to fight in the First World War, or I wake up at 2 o'clock morning. So I don't know. It's a good question, and I don't know. Every year I have that question: do I still want to do coffee? Do I mean, I enjoy this podcast, for example, a lot because it's a hobby right now. I mean, obviously I'm talking to people I like, but do I want to do this next year? I don't know. It's always a surprise for myself too. How long you are guys going to do this?
I mean, probably for another decade or so, I imagine, unless something else happens. I mean, this is kind of like you. This is what we've grown to know and love.
And yeah, as much as it's
It
hard,
has like a lot of other, it's not like you work in a business and you go to the same office every day. I mean, we have a couple cafes, and because of the roasting, we get to travel a bit and just interacting with the different people that we know in our neighborhood. Like, I mean, I've lived in this neighborhood for 21 years, and for the first 8, I knew a handful of people, and now I know dozens, if not hundreds, or I don't know all their names, but through the cafe, I'm immersed more in my community because of that and the interactions with the community, and that's like just a really kind of a wonderful thing, that an opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So there's benefits beyond just the coffee itself.
Yeah, but
on that note, we're tired though.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong.
We're tired. We're getting to that age,
slowing down,
where we want peace and quiet. We're slowing down, and yeah, we maybe 10 more years. We'll see.
Do you remember Kelly's question from the last podcast? She asked me whether I am sad if I sold the company.
You were like, no, not at all. You came back pretty excited with that too. You're like, no. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, you should have paused a little bit longer on that one,
Well, it keeps it more real, right? I mean, I didn't have to think about it. I was like, no, I had so much on my plate. And don't misunderstand, I did not hate work with Unleashed Coffee. I loved it. It was a concept which we came up with, William. I was like, this is revolutionary in my head. Maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but it's like I loved every moment of it. But when you are in a grind and suddenly everything feels like I have to do this rather than I want to do this, it was a different perspective, and I don't know how long will it feel. As soon as something feels for me as a grind, I give up on it, and I'm lucky because I can, and I know that not every human is financially stable enough to do that. So I'm super lucky, and I'm appreciating it a lot. So for me, that's a big thing.
We're so excited that you invited us in. What a wonderful conversation. It's nice that we can share this, but it was just good to, hey, if it all goes away, we just had a really nice conversation right now. It was just really wonderful talking to you. You know what I mean? It's like, you're a great person to talk to. I really love the work you do. I think you really helped me personally a lot when I was starting out because of this resource, because you've created a resource for people that I don't know if that's what you set out to do, but like that people that are interested and maybe they don't follow, maybe they listen to it and don't follow through with their dream, you know what I mean? But whatever, that you create a resource to allow other people to some insight into how this industry works and how you can be a part of it if you want to, and a bit of the culture of it, and especially when I first started listening to you, there weren't a lot of other resources like that out there, so thank you for doing it for as long as you have, and you continue to be a wonderful insight in our community, man. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys. And now I will go with a head up for a whole week, and I feel like I'm something special. No, it's I think this podcast turned out to be something much more than I anticipated in the beginning. In the beginning, I just wanted to learn, and that was the easiest way how you could approach a professional, like somebody who does it for many years. I mean, if I would go to, to you it's different, but if I would go to some other person and say, hey, tell me your secrets, they go like, back off. But if I say, hey, I have a podcast, tell me your secrets, it works differently. Before we end this podcast, let the people know where they can find you.
So our website is cafedeleche.net. And you could also reach me at matt@cafedeleche.net.
In any case, I'll put all these links, the website, the email, your Instagram, because that's pretty awesome. I love your stuff that you do on Instagram, into the show notes. So just go to Coffee Is Me website and you find all those links in the show notes. Thank you guys for staying with us. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself as much as we did on this podcast, and talk to you next time. Bye.